They say money can't buy happiness, but the lack of it can certainly reveal a monster. Liam thought he had played the perfect game. He married a quiet, simple woman, used her for 3 years, and then decided to discard her like yesterday's trash when his career took off. He dragged her to court, intending to leave her homeless and humiliated in front of the entire city. He thought she was a nobody with a mountain of debt. He was wrong. Dead wrong. When the courtroom doors swung open, Liam didn't just lose his lawsuit, he lost his reality. This is the story of how a billionaire heiress in disguise taught her arrogant husband a brutal lesson in humility. The morning of the hearing, the rain battered the windows of the penthouse apartment in downtown Seattle. Inside, the silence was louder than the storm. Sarah sat at the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap. She looked at the suitcase by the door, a battered, beige carry-on that she had brought with her into this marriage 3 years ago. It was the only thing she was taking out of it. "Are you still moping?" The voice cut through the air like a serrated knife. Liam stood in the doorway, adjusting the cufflinks on his bespoke Italian suit. He looked every inch the rising corporate shark he was, tall, impeccably groomed, with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that held zero warmth. "I'm just waiting, Liam," Sarah said softly. Her voice was steady, though her heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Liam scoffed, walking over to the mirror to inspect his tie. "Waiting for what? A miracle? I told you, Sarah, the settlement offer is final. You take the $10,000, sign the NDA, and you disappear. If you fight me today, if you try to make a scene in front of the judge, I will make sure you owe me money by the time we leave that courtroom." He turned to look at her, a sneer curling his lip. "Look at you. You're pathetic. I don't know how I tolerated it for 3 years. The drab clothes, the silence, the lack of ambition." Sarah stood up slowly. She was wearing a simple grey dress, off the rack, something she had bought at a thrift store. "I gave you a home, Liam. I supported you when you were an intern making copies. I paid the bills when you were studying for your MBA. And now I'm a VP at Sterling & Co., Liam interrupted, checking his Rolex. "I've outgrown you, Sarah. It's natural selection. You're a Honda Civic. I'm a Ferrari. You don't park a Civic in a Ferrari garage." He grabbed his briefcase. "My lawyer, Marcus Thorne, will meet us there. Don't be late. And for God's sake, try to brush your hair. You look like a maid." With that, he walked out. The heavy oak door slammed shut, vibrating the walls. Sarah stood there for a long moment. She walked over to the window and looked down at the grey city streets. A black sedan was waiting for Liam. She watched him get in. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a phone. It wasn't the cracked iPhone 8 Liam allowed her to have. It was a sleek, encrypted device made of titanium. She dialed a number. "Yes, Miss Vance," a deep voice answered on the first ring. "It's today, Arthur," Sarah said, her voice changing. The timidity evaporated, replaced by a cold, steely authority. "Is my father in the city?" "Mr. Vance's jet landed at King County International 20 minutes ago. He is displeased with the situation." "Good," Sarah said. "Tell him to wait for my signal. I want Liam to say everything he has to say on the record before we end this." "Understood, Miss Vance. The security team is already at the courthouse." Sarah hung up. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Liam saw a mouse. He had no idea he had been sleeping next to a lioness. She picked up her battered suitcase, not because she needed it, but because it was part of the costume. It was time to go to court. The Superior Court of Washington was a daunting building, a monolith of stone and glass designed to intimidate. The lobby was crowded with lawyers, clerks, and miserable couples waiting for their lives to be dissected. Sarah walked in alone. She kept her head down, clutching her purse. Near the elevators, she saw them. Liam was standing there, laughing. But he wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm, wearing a dress that cost more than Sarah's entire wardrobe, was Jessica. Jessica was Liam's assistant. She was 22, blonde, and vicious. She was the reason for the late nights at the office. She was the reason Liam had started hiding his phone. Sarah stopped. She knew Jessica would be there. Liam had no shame, but seeing them together in public, before the divorce was even finalized, was a fresh sting. "Oh, look, Liam!" Jessica's high-pitched voice echoed through the lobby. "Here comes the charity case." Liam turned, his smile fading into a look of annoyance. "Sarah, you actually showed up." "I was summoned, Liam," Sarah said quietly. Jessica stepped forward, looking Sarah up and down with exaggerated pity. "Honey, do you really think you have a chance? Liam has Marcus Thorne representing him. Do you even have a lawyer? Or did you just bring a library card?" "I'm representing myself," Sarah said. Liam threw his head back and laughed. It was a cruel, barking sound that drew stares from nearby strangers. "You? Representing yourself? Sarah, you couldn't negotiate a discount at a grocery store. You're going to get slaughtered." "It's a simple hearing, Liam," Sarah replied, keeping her face neutral. "It's a slaughter," Liam corrected. "Marcus is going to tear you apart. He's going to expose every flaw, every inadequacy. He's going to prove that you were a leech on my success." He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a menacing whisper. "I'm doing you a favor, Sarah. Take the settlement. Go back to whatever trailer park you crawled out of. Don't make me embarrass you." "I think we define embarrassment differently," Sarah said. Just then, the elevator doors pinged open. A man stepped out who sucked the air out of the room. He was short, bald, and wore a suit that screamed power. It was Marcus Thorne, the most feared divorce attorney in the state. He didn't lose. He destroyed. "Liam!" Thorne barked, not even looking at Sarah. "Judge Harrison is presiding. He's in a bad mood. Let's make this quick. Is this the wife?" Thorne turned his cold eyes on Sarah. He looked at her like she was a stain on the carpet. "Mrs. Sterling, I advise you to surrender all claims to the marital assets immediately. If you waste my time inside that courtroom, I will petition for you to cover my legal fees, and I charge $1,200 an hour." Sarah met his gaze. For a split second, Thorne frowned. There was something in her eyes, a lack of fear, that he wasn't used to seeing in discarded wives, but he dismissed it as stupidity. "I'm ready when you are, Mr. Thorne," Sarah said. "Cute," Jessica giggled, checking her nails. "She thinks she's people." "Let's go," Liam said, checking his watch again. "I have a reservation at Le Bernardin at 1. I want this over by noon." They walked toward the courtroom doors. Department 12. Sarah trailed behind them. She watched Jessica whisper something in Liam's ear, making him smirk. She watched Thorne check his files, confident in an easy victory. They had no idea that the building was already surrounded. They had no idea that the judge in a bad mood was the least of their problems. As Sarah reached for the door handle, her phone buzzed one last time, a text message from a blocked number. "The Eagle has landed. We are in the building." Sarah took a deep breath, smoothed her cheap grey dress, and pushed the doors open. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and old wood. It was colder inside than out in the hallway. Sarah took her seat at the defendant's table. It looked empty. Just her, a notepad and a pencil. On the other side, the plaintiff's table was crowded. Liam sat in the center, flanked by Marcus Thorne and 2 junior associates. Piles of documents were stacked high. Bank statements, credit card bills, projected earnings. It was a wall of paper designed to intimidate. Jessica sat in the front row of the gallery, right behind Liam, smacking gum and scrolling on her phone. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Harrison entered. He was an older man with thick glasses and a reputation for hating time wasters. He sat down, adjusted his robe, and looked at the docket. "Sterling versus Sterling," the judge grumbled. "Petition for dissolution of marriage. I see the petitioner is represented by Mr. Thorne, and the respondent, Miss Sterling. You are pro se." "Yes, Your Honor." Sarah stood up. "I will be representing myself." Thorne stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor, we intend to keep this brief. My client, Mr. Liam Sterling, is a high net worth individual. The respondent, Mrs. Sarah Sterling, has contributed 0 financial assets to the marriage. In fact, she has been a financial drain. We are asking for a complete enforcement of the separation of assets. Mr. Sterling keeps the apartment, the cars, the investments, and his future earnings. We are offering a one-time goodwill payment of $10,000 to help Mrs. Sterling transition to a life suited to her means." The judge looked at Sarah. "Ms. Sterling, do you contest this?" "I do, Your Honor," Sarah said. Her voice was clear, carrying to the back of the room. "I am not asking for his money. I am asking for what is fair." Liam snorted audibly. Thorne patted Liam's arm to quiet him. "Fair," Thorne chuckled dryly. "Your Honor, fairness is based on contribution. Mr. Sterling works 80 hours a week. He built his portfolio from the ground up. Mrs. Sterling has not held a job in 3 years. She claims to be a homemaker, yet we have records of a cleaning service being paid for by my client. What exactly did she contribute besides spending my client's hard-earned money?" Thorne picked up a document. "I have here credit card statements. Dinners, clothes, groceries, all paid for by Mr. Sterling. Mrs. Sterling brought nothing into this marriage but debt. We believe she married Mr. Sterling solely for financial gain. She is a gold digger, Your Honor, plain and simple, and a failed one at that." The insult hung in the air. Jessica giggled from the back row. Sarah didn't flinch. She wrote something down on her notepad. "Wait for it." "Mr. Thorne," the judge said, looking bored. "Save the theatrics. Call your first witness." I call the petitioner, Liam Sterling, to the stand. Liam stood up, confident. He walked to the witness box, swore on the Bible, and sat down. He looked at Sarah with a smug grin. This was his moment. He wanted to humiliate her. He wanted to go on record, telling the world how useless she was. "Mr. Sterling," Thorne began, pacing in front of the stand, "describe the dynamic of your marriage." Liam leaned into the microphone. It was suffocating. "I am an ambitious man. I want to build an empire. Sarah is content with mediocrity. I tried to push her. I tried to help her improve herself, but she just wanted to sit at home and live off my success." "Did she support your career?" "Support?" Liam laughed. "She embarrassed me. I couldn't bring her to corporate events. She doesn't know how to dress. She doesn't know how to speak to important people. I lost a potential client once because she wore a polyester dress to a gala. It was humiliating. I realized then that she was an anchor around my neck." Sarah watched him. She remembered that gala. She had worn that dress because Liam had cancelled her credit card that week, claiming money was tight while he bought a diamond bracelet for Jessica. "And what about the infidelity accusations?" Thorne asked, lobbing a softball. "Baseless," Liam lied smoothly. "Sarah is paranoid. She's jealous of my female colleagues because they are successful and beautiful. And she is, well, look at her." He gestured to Sarah at the empty table. "I have never cheated," Liam said, looking the judge in the eye. "I simply found intellectual companionship elsewhere, because my wife is incapable of understanding my world." "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," Thorne said. He turned to Sarah. "Your witness." The courtroom went silent. Everyone looked at Sarah, the mouse in the corner. Sarah stood up. She didn't walk to the podium. She stood behind her table. "Mr. Sterling," Sarah said, "you claim you are the sole provider, that you built your empire alone." "That's a fact," Liam shot back. "And you claim I embarrassed you because I don't know how to speak to important people?" "You don't even know which fork to use, Sarah," Liam sneered. "Is it true, Liam, that in 2023 your company, Sterling & Co., was facing bankruptcy?" Thorne jumped up. "Objection? Relevance?" "It goes to financial contribution, Your Honor," Sarah said calmly. "Overruled," the judge said. "Answer the question." Liam looked annoyed. "We had a cash flow issue. Every business does." "And who fixed that cash flow issue, Liam?" Sarah asked. "Who secured the bridge loan from the Cayman Islands Trust that saved your job?" Liam froze. He blinked. I did. I secured that loan." "Did you?" Sarah tilted her head. "Or did the loan appear in your account the day after I made a phone call?" Liam laughed nervously. "You? Make a phone call? To who? The grocery store? You don't know anyone in the Caymans." "I have one more question," Sarah said. She looked at her watch. It was 11:20 a.m. exactly. "You said I don't know how to speak to important people. Do you consider Alexander Vance an important person?" The room went deadly silent. Even the judge looked up. Alexander Vance was one of the richest men in the world. He owned Vance Global, shipping, tech, oil. He was American royalty. "Alexander Vance?" Liam frowned. "Of course he's important. He's a legend. What does he have to do with you? Answer the question, Liam. If Alexander Vance walked through that door right now, would you tell him his daughter is a gold digger?" "What kind of hypothetical nonsense is this?" Liam spat. "If Alexander Vance walked in here, I'd shake his hand, but he's not walking in here, and he certainly doesn't care about a nobody like you." Sarah smiled. It was the first time she had smiled all day. It was a terrifying smile. "No, Liam," she said softly. "I don't think you will shake his hand." Sarah turned to the back of the courtroom. She looked at the heavy double doors. "You can come in now, Daddy." The heavy mahogany doors of Department 12 didn't just open. They were pushed aside by two men in dark suits who moved with the synchronized precision of Secret Service agents. They stepped in, scanning the room, their earpieces coiling down their necks. Then he walked in. Alexander Vance. In the business world, Vance was a myth. He was the man who bought entire countries' debt. He was the man whose whisper could crash the stock market. Seeing him in a drab county courthouse was like seeing a great white shark in a goldfish bowl. He wore a navy three-piece suit that cost more than Liam's car. He walked with a cane, not out of frailty, but as an accessory of command. The tapping of the cane against the linoleum floor echoed like gunshots in the silent room. Click, click, click. Liam's jaw actually dropped. His mouth hung open. Beside him, Marcus Thorne, the shark lawyer, looked as if he had swallowed a lemon. Thorne knew exactly who this was. He turned pale, his arrogant posture collapsing instantly. "What is the meaning of this?" Judge Harrison asked, though his voice lacked its usual bite. He squinted over his glasses. "This is a closed hearing." Alexander Vance stopped at the railing. He didn't look at Liam. He didn't look at Thorne. He looked solely at the judge. "Apologies, Your Honor," Vance said. His voice was a deep baritone, smooth as aged whiskey. "I was informed by my daughter that her character was being assassinated in your courtroom. I thought it pertinent to provide a character witness. Your daughter. The judge looked from the billionaire to the woman in the cheap grey dress. Liam stood up, his face flushing red. Panic and denial were warring in his brain. Objection! This is a stunt. Sarah hired an actor. Look at him. Alexander Vance doesn't have a daughter named Sarah Sterling. Vance finally turned his head. He looked at Liam the way one looks at a cockroach on a dinner plate. She is Sarah Vance, the billionaire said coldly. She took the name Sterling because she was foolish enough to believe you were a man of substance. A mistake I advised her against 3 years ago. Liam laughed, a high, hysterical sound. No way. I've known Sarah for 4 years. She's poor. She counts coupons. She drives a 2015 Honda. Sarah stepped out from behind her table. Her posture had changed. The slump was gone. She stood with the same imperious grace as her father. I drove a Honda because I didn't want you to love me for my Ferrari, Liam, Sarah said. I clipped coupons because I wanted to build a life with you based on partnership, not handouts. I wanted to see if you could love me. Just Sarah, the girl who made you coffee. She walked over to the railing and took her father's hand. Vance kissed her cheek gently. And how did he do, sweetheart? Vance asked. He failed, Daddy, Sarah said, her eyes locking onto Liam's. Spectacularly. Marcus Thorne was frantically typing on his phone, likely Googling Sarah Vance. His face went from pale to grey. He leaned over to Liam and hissed, "Shut up! Sit down! If that is really Alexander Vance, you are in serious trouble." "It's a trick!" Liam yelled, slamming his hand on the table. "You expect me to believe my wife, who asked me for $20 last week to buy groceries, is a billionaire heiress? It's a lie. Judge, I demand this man be removed." Vance sighed. He snapped his fingers. One of his bodyguards stepped forward and placed a thick file on the judge's bench. Birth certificate, Vance listed, trust fund deeds, and a copy of the transfer wire for $5 million sent to Sterling & Co. in 2023 to prevent insolvency. You'll find the sender listed as the Vance Family Trust, authorized by Sarah Vance. The judge opened the file. He adjusted his glasses. He looked at the documents, then at Liam. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, his voice dropping an octave. "Sit down. Now." Liam collapsed into his chair. He looked at Jessica in the gallery. Jessica wasn't looking at him. She was staring at Alexander Vance with wide, hungry eyes, realizing she had bet on the wrong horse. The dynamic in the room had shifted violently. Marcus Thorne, previously the predator, was now sweating profusely. He stood up, buttoning and unbuttoning his jacket nervously. "Your Honor," Thorne stammered. If the respondent is indeed Ms. Vance, this changes the financial discovery. However, my client's main argument stands. He is the primary earner. He built his career. Regardless of her family's wealth, the marital assets created by Mr. Sterling belong to him. Sarah laughed. It was a genuine, amused sound. "Mr. Thorne," Sarah said, taking a step toward the plaintiff's table. "Let's talk about Liam's career. Liam, do you remember how you got your promotion to vice president last year?" Liam glared at her. "I earned it. I landed the Kensington account. It was the biggest deal of the year." "The Kensington account," Sarah repeated. "Lord Kensington, an old British shipping magnate, notoriously difficult, hates young, American hotshots." "I charmed him," Liam insisted. "I sold him on our logistics platform." "You didn't sell him anything," Sarah said. "I invited his wife to tea 2 days before your meeting. We discussed her charity for stray greyhounds. I wrote a check for $50,000 to her foundation on your behalf. That evening, she told her husband to sign with the nice young man whose wife loves dogs." Liam's mouth opened, but no sound came out. And the year before that? Sarah continued, circling the table like a shark. When you were about to be fired for messing up the supply chain data? Suddenly, the CEO decided to give you a second chance. Why? Because he saw my potential. Because my father called him, Sarah said. She looked at Vance. Vance nodded. I told him that if he fired my son-in-law, I would pull my shipping contracts from his firm. He kept you on because he was terrified of me, Liam. Not because you are talented. You are, at best, a mediocre middle manager with delusions of grandeur. Lies! Liam screamed. He stood up, knocking his chair over. I am a self-made man. I built this. You built nothing, Sarah shouted back, her voice finally rising, cracking with the pain she had held in for months. You stand on a pedestal I built for you, and you look down on me. I cooked your meals. I ironed your shirts. I listened to your speeches. And behind the scenes, I was buying your success to keep your fragile ego intact. And how did you repay me? By sleeping with your secretary and calling me a Honda Civic? She reached into her purse, not the cheap one, but a small clutch she had pulled from the larger bag. She tossed a stack of photos onto Liam's table. Exhibit B, Sarah said coldly. You and Jessica in Cabo. You and Jessica at the Ritz. You and Jessica buying jewelry with the company credit card. Thorne picked up the photos. He closed his eyes. You used the company card for the mistress? He whispered to Liam. Are you an idiot? It's a business expense, Liam sputtered. No, Liam, Sarah said. It's embezzlement. And since I am the majority shareholder of the shell company that owns your firm's debt, I think I'll be pressing charges. The blood drained from Liam's face so fast he looked like a ghost. What? Sterling & Co. is owned by a holding group, Sarah explained, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. Orion Holdings. Who do you think owns Orion, Liam? No, Liam whispered. I bought your company's debt 6 months ago when I found out about Jessica, Sarah said. I wanted to see how far you would go. I own your job. I own your office. I own the chair you sit in. She turned to the judge. Your Honor, I am countersuing, not for alimony. I don't need his money. I am suing for fraud, misuse of company funds, and emotional distress. And I want full enforcement of the prenuptial agreement. We never signed a prenup, Liam yelled. That's why I'm taking half. Sarah smiled. She looked at her father. Alexander Vance reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a single, folded piece of paper. You didn't sign a prenup with Sarah Sterling, Vance said. But 3 years ago, when you applied for a loan to buy your first apartment, the one you couldn't afford, you signed a mountain of paperwork at the bank. You didn't read it, did you, Liam? You were too busy staring at the teller. Vance slid the paper across the table. Buried in the loan guarantee, which I backed, was a clause. In the event of a divorce from the beneficiary's daughter, all assets acquired during the marriage revert to the guarantor. Liam grabbed the paper. His hands were shaking so hard he ripped the corner. He scanned the fine print. Clause 14b, infidelity clause. In the event of proven adultery, forfeiture of all assets, repayment of all subsidies. Liam looked up. He looked small. He looked like a child caught stealing candy. You set me up, he whispered. I tested you, Sarah corrected. You failed. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Even the stenographer had stopped typing, her mouth agape. Then, a chair scraped against the floor. In the back row, Jessica stood up. She smoothed her dress, picked up her designer bag, and started walking toward the aisle. Jessica? Liam turned, his eyes wide. Where are you going? Jessica didn't look at him. She looked straight ahead. I have a nail appointment. A nail appointment? Liam stammered. We have to fight this. You said you'd support me." Jessica stopped. She turned slowly. Her face, usually masked in heavy makeup and a fake smile, was now cold and hard. "Liam," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I dated a VP. I dated a guy with a future. I didn't date an unemployed embezzler who's about to get sued by the Vance family." She looked at Sarah. For a moment, there was a flash of fear in Jessica's eyes. "Mrs. Sterling. Excuse me, Miss Vance. I didn't know. He told me you were—" "I know what he told you," Sarah said calmly. "You can go, Jessica, but leave the bracelet." Jessica froze. "What?" "The diamond tennis bracelet," Sarah said. "He bought it with the company card, my company's card. That's stolen property. Hand it over, or the marshals can arrest you for possession of stolen goods right now." Jessica looked at the two large bodyguards standing by the door. She looked at the judge, who was nodding in agreement. With a tremble of fury, Jessica unclasped the bracelet and threw it on the floor. "He's bad in bed anyway," Jessica spat. Then she turned and stormed out of the courtroom, the click of her heels fading into the hallway. Liam stood alone. His lawyer, Marcus Thorne, was slowly packing his briefcase. "Marcus?" Liam asked. "What do we do? What's the rebuttal?" Thorne snapped his briefcase shut. "There is no rebuttal, Liam. You're done. And frankly, I'm withdrawing as your counsel." "You can't withdraw. I paid you a retainer." "My retainer doesn't cover fighting Alexander Vance," Thorne said. "And it certainly doesn't cover defending a client who lied to me about his finances, his wife, and his criminal liability regarding company credit cards. I'm out. Good luck representing yourself." Thorne walked past Liam, nodded respectfully to Vance, and exited. Liam was now truly alone. He looked at the judge. He looked at Sarah. "Sarah," he said, his voice cracking. He tried to summon the charm that had worked on her 3 years ago. He stepped around the table, holding his hands out. "Sarah, baby, look at this. It's gotten out of hand. We're losing our heads." "Stay back," the bailiff warned, hand on his holster. "Sarah, please," Liam pleaded. Tears, real or fake, it was hard to tell, welling in his eyes. "I love you. You know I do." Jessica meant nothing. It was just stress. "You know how hard I work. I did it for us. I wanted to be worthy of you." Sarah watched him beg. She remembered the nights she cried herself to sleep while he was working late. She remembered the way he made her feel small, stupid, and ugly. "You wanted to be worthy of a Ferrari," Sarah said softly. "But you're not even a driver, Liam. You're just a passenger." She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I have one final request." "Name it, Ms. Vance," the judge said. "I want him to read the text message he sent me this morning, out loud, for the record." Liam froze. "Read it, Mr. Sterling," the judge ordered. Liam pulled out his phone with trembling fingers. He scrolled up. He swallowed hard. "Read it," Sarah commanded. "It says—" Liam's voice shook. "You are a pathetic waste of space. Do everyone a favor and disappear after court. Nobody wants you." Sarah nodded. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 3 years lift off her shoulders. "You were right about one thing, Liam," she said. "The Sarah Sterling you knew, she did disappear. She's gone." She turned to her father. "I'm ready to go, Daddy." "Wait!" Liam shouted as they turned to leave. "What about me? What happens to me?" Alexander Vance stopped. He turned one last time. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He looked at Liam with the indifference of a mountain looking at a pebble. "I believe," Vance said, "that is a question for the district attorney. My lawyers handed over the embezzlement evidence to the police 10 minutes ago. They are waiting for you in the lobby." The walk from Department 12 to the lobby of the Superior Court was the longest walk of Liam Sterling's life. He was no longer strutting. He was stumbling, his legs feeling like they were made of lead. He pushed through the main doors, hoping to slip away into a cab, maybe get to the airport before his accounts were frozen. He still had a few thousand in a private stash, he reasoned. He could go to Mexico. He could start over. He was Liam Sterling. He was a survivor. But as the glass doors slid open, a wall of white light blinded him. Flashbulbs, hundreds of them. "Mr. Sterling, is it true you embezzled $2 million? Liam, look this way. How does it feel to divorce Alexander Vance's daughter? Did you really make your wife use a coupon while you bought your mistress a Cartier bracelet?" The news had leaked. In the age of social media, the story of the undercover heiress had gone viral before the gavel had even hit the sound block. The lobby was swarming with reporters, paparazzi, and curious onlookers holding up smartphones. Liam shielded his eyes. "No comment. Get out of my way," he shouted, trying to push through the throng. "Mr. Liam Sterling?" A stern voice cut through the chaos. Two uniformed officers and a detective in a cheap suit stepped in front of him, blocking his path to the street. "I'm busy," Liam snapped, trying to channel his old authority. "I have a meeting." "You have a meeting with the booking officer," the detective said, pulling a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt. "Liam Sterling, you are under arrest for grand larceny, wire fraud, and corporate embezzlement. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." The crowd gasped. The cameras clicked furiously, capturing every frame of Liam's destruction. "You can't do this!" Liam struggled as the metal cuffs bit into his wrists. "Do you know who I am? I'm a vice president." "You're a suspect," the detective corrected, spinning him around. "And you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." As they marched him toward the waiting squad car, Liam looked back. Through the glass doors of the courthouse, he saw Sarah. She was standing on the mezzanine level, flanked by her father and his security team. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't jeering. She was simply watching him with a look of profound pity. She looked like a queen watching a jester being dragged to the dungeon. The officer shoved Liam's head down to protect it, as he was stuffed into the back of the cruiser. The door slammed shut, sealing him inside a cage of hard plastic and stale air. The fallout was nuclear. Over the next 48 hours, Liam's life was dismantled with surgical precision. The empire he claimed to have built turned out to be a house of cards. Sterling & Co., under the guidance of the new majority owner, Sarah Vance, released a statement condemning Liam's actions and announcing a full forensic audit. The audit revealed that Liam hadn't just embezzled for jewelry. He had been cooking the books to hide losses on the Kensington deal. He was incompetent, as well as corrupt. Then came the social betrayal. Jessica, realizing her reputation was on the line, went on a popular talk show the very next day. "I was a victim too," Jessica sobbed to the camera, wearing a modest sweater and no makeup. "Liam told me he was single. He told me his wife was crazy and abusive. He manipulated me. I had no idea he was stealing money. I'm just a girl from a small town who fell for a predator." Sarah watched the interview from her father's penthouse, sipping tea. "She's a good actress," Alexander Vance noted, reading the paper. "Do you want to sue her, too?" "No," Sarah said, turning off the TV. "Let her live with the shame. The internet never forgets. She'll be the mistress for the rest of her life. That's punishment enough." Liam's friends, the guys he drank scotch with, the colleagues he bragged to, vanished. His phone, which he was allowed to check once before it was seized as evidence, had 0 messages of support. No lawyers offering to help. No buddies offering bail money. Just notifications from LinkedIn telling him his profile had been flagged for suspicious activity. He was denied bail due to being a flight risk, a tip provided by Marcus Thorne, who was eager to distance himself from the wreckage. Liam was transferred to the King County Jail to await trial. He spent his first night not in a penthouse with Egyptian cotton sheets, but on a thin mattress that smelled of bleach and despair. He stared at the concrete ceiling, listening to the shouts of other inmates. He closed his eyes and saw Sarah's face. Not the heiress in the designer dress, but the girl in the grey cardigan who used to make him soup when he was sick. The girl he had called a Honda Civic. He realized then, in the cold dark, that he had crashed the only vehicle that was ever going to take him anywhere worth going. 12 months later. The Washington State Penitentiary at Walla Walla was a grey, imposing fortress surrounded by wheat fields. It was a long way from the Seattle skyline. The visiting room was loud, filled with the murmur of conversations and the static of guards' radios. Liam sat on one side of the plexiglass barrier. The year had not been kind to him. The expensive haircut was gone, replaced by a buzz cut. His skin was sallow from a lack of sunlight. He had lost weight, his sharp suit replaced by a baggy orange jumpsuit with a number stenciled on the chest. He looked at his hands, calloused from working in the prison laundry. "Visitor," the guard grunted. Liam looked up, expecting his public defender again. He wasn't expecting her. Sarah sat down on the metal stool on the other side of the glass. She looked radiant. She was wearing a cream-colored trench coat and a silk scarf. Her hair was cut in a stylish bob. She looked younger, lighter, as if a heavy gravity had been turned off. Liam stared at her, unable to speak for a moment. He picked up the black phone receiver. Sarah picked up hers. "Hello, Liam," she said. Her voice was calm, devoid of the anger he had seen in the courtroom. "Sarah," Liam croaked. His voice was raspy. I didn't think you'd come." "I needed to sign the final papers for the sale of the apartment," Sarah said, sliding a document toward the glass, though he couldn't touch it. "And I wanted to see you. One last time." Liam looked at her with hungry eyes. "You look expensive." "I look happy," Sarah corrected. "There's a difference." Liam let out a shaky breath. "It's hell in here, Sarah. You have no idea. The food, the noise. I'm an educated man. I don't belong here. You committed fraud, Liam. You stole $3 million. This is exactly where you belong," Sarah said, stating it as a fact, not an insult. "I'm sorry," Liam whispered, leaning his forehead against the glass. "I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I am. I was stupid. I was arrogant. I had everything with you, and I threw it away for what? For people who didn't even show up to my trial." "I know," Sarah said. Is there any chance?" Liam looked up, a spark of his old manipulation trying to ignite. "Sarah, you have power. Your father has judges in his pocket. You could get me a reduced sentence. Maybe a transfer to a minimum security camp? Please, for the sake of what we had." Sarah looked at him, and for a second she felt a pang of sadness. Not for him, but for the memory of the man she thought he was. "What we had was a lie, Liam," she said softly. "I loved a version of you that didn't exist. I loved the potential I saw in you. But you didn't love me. You loved the idea of owning me. And when you thought I was worthless, you tried to throw me away." She paused, her eyes hardening slightly. "I didn't come here to save you. I came here to thank you." Liam blinked. "Thank me?" "Yes," Sarah said. "For 3 years I hid who I was. I played small because I didn't want to intimidate you. I dimmed my light so you could shine. But when you dragged me to that court, when you tried to destroy me, you woke me up. You forced me to stop hiding. You forced me to be a Vance again." She stood up. I'm running the foundation now, Liam. We're providing legal aid to women going through high-conflict divorces. We're helping Honda Civics fight against Ferraris. You inspired that. Liam sat there, stunned. The irony tasted like ash in his mouth. His cruelty had created the very weapon that destroyed him and was now saving others. Don't go, Liam pleaded, panic rising in his chest. Sarah, please, I have nobody. Jessica never wrote. My parents won't take my calls. You're the only one who knows me. I knew a man named Liam, Sarah said, hanging up the phone receiver. But he died the day he walked into that courtroom. She placed her hand on the glass for a brief second, a gesture of final goodbye. Goodbye, Liam. Sarah turned and walked toward the exit. The heavy steel door buzzed open. Liam slammed his hand against the glass. Sarah! Sarah! But she didn't look back. The door clanged shut, leaving Liam alone with his reflection in the plexiglass. A reflection of a man who had won the lottery and tore up the ticket. 2 years later, the winter air in New York City was biting. But inside the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel, the atmosphere was warm, golden, and smelling of expensive perfume and triumph. Sarah stood at the mahogany podium, looking out at a sea of faces. There were 500 people in the room, senators, tech moguls, fashion icons, and every single one of them was silent, hanging on her every word. We often think of rock bottom as the end, Sarah said, her voice clear and amplified, devoid of the tremor that used to haunt her. She wasn't wearing grey anymore. Tonight, she wore a gown of emerald green silk that draped over her like liquid armor. But in my experience, rock bottom is the solid foundation on which you rebuild your life. The Vance Sterling initiative was born from a moment of destruction. Tonight, thanks to your generosity, we have raised $12 million to provide top-tier legal defense for women who are being financially silenced. The applause that followed was not polite. It was thunderous. It washed over her, a physical wave of validation. As she stepped down from the stage, the crowd parted for her. 2 years ago, she had been invisible, a Honda Civic parked in the back of the lot. Now, she was the engine driving the room. You have a hell of a stage presence, kid, a deep voice rumbled. Sarah turned to see her father, Alexander Vance, leaning on his cane near a pillar. He looked older, his hair fully white now, but his eyes were sharp. He handed her a glass of sparkling water. He knew she didn't drink champagne when she was working. I learned from the best, Sarah replied, taking the glass. Vance looked at her, his expression uncharacteristically soft. You know when you married him? I was terrified. I thought you were too soft for this world, Sarah. I thought he would break you, and I'd have to pick up the pieces. He did break me, Daddy, Sarah said, her gaze drifting to the chandeliers above. But that's the thing about breaking. It lets the light in. I didn't need you to pick up the pieces. I needed to rearrange them myself. Vance nodded, a look of profound respect crossing his face. He touched her arm. I'm proud of you. Not because you're a Vance, but because of who you've become in spite of it. Sarah squeezed his hand, then excused herself. She needed a moment of air. The adoration of the crowd was intoxicating, but also exhausting. She wove through the tables, politely declining 3 requests for interviews and 2 marriage proposals from hedge fund managers who looked at her portfolio rather than her face. She stepped out onto the terrace. The noise of the gala faded into a muffled hum behind the thick glass doors. The New York skyline sprawled out before her, a grid of electricity and ambition. She gripped the cold stone railing. She thought about Liam. It was strange. For the first year, thinking of him brought rage. Now, it brought nothing. He was a ghost, a faded memory of a bad dream. She had heard rumors. He was working in a warehouse in Ohio, or maybe a call center in Nevada. It didn't matter. He was the past. The structural integrity of this balcony is sound, I promise. You don't need to grip it that hard. Sarah turned. Ethan Caldwell was leaning against the doorframe, a half smile playing on his lips. Ethan was different from the men Sarah used to know. He wasn't a shark like Liam, and he wasn't a titan like her father. He was an architect, a creator. He had broad shoulders, messy dark hair that defied his tuxedo, and hands that were rough from working with stone and steel. He had designed the new shelter for her foundation, and in the 6 months they had worked together, he had never once asked about her trust fund. "I'm not worried about it falling," Sarah said, relaxing her grip. "I was just thinking about how much things change. 3 years ago, I was afraid to order dinner in a restaurant because I was worried I'd say the wrong thing." Ethan walked over and stood beside her. He didn't crowd her. He just shared the silence. "And now?" "Now," Sarah laughed softly. "I just gave a speech to the governor, and I'm pretty sure I intimidated him." "You definitely intimidated him," Ethan chuckled. "I saw him check his tie 3 times while you were talking." He turned to face her, his expression turning serious. The city lights reflected in his dark eyes. "You know, Sarah, I see a lot of buildings. I see facades that look strong but crumble under pressure. And I see structures that look simple but can withstand an earthquake." He reached out, his fingers brushing the back of her hand. It was a tentative, respectful gesture. "You are the strongest structure I've ever met," Ethan said softly. "You built a cathedral out of rubble." Sarah felt a warmth that spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the heaters on the terrace. With Liam, every compliment had a price tag. Every affection was a transaction. With Ethan, it felt like gravity. Simple. Undeniable. "I'm still under construction," Sarah whispered, looking down at his hand covering hers. "Aren't we all?" Ethan smiled. "I'm good with blueprints, if you ever need a partner on the project." Sarah looked up at him. She looked at the ring finger of her left hand. It was bare, no longer marked by the heavy diamond Liam had used to brand her, nor the cheap band she had worn to appease him. It was just her hand, capable, strong, open. She turned her hand over and interlaced her fingers with Ethan's. His grip was firm, warm, and real. "I think," Sarah said, her voice steady and sure, "I'd like that very much." A gust of wind blew across the terrace, ruffling her hair. Years ago, she would have run inside to fix it, terrified of looking imperfect. Now, she just tilted her head back and let the wind hit her face. She wasn't hiding from the elements anymore. She had weathered the hurricane of betrayal, the flood of public scrutiny, and the drought of loneliness. She looked at the city, then back at the man standing beside her, who saw her, really saw her. Sarah Vance smiled. It wasn't the shy smile of a victim or the cold smile of a revenger. It was the smile of a woman who had walked through hell and came out holding the torch. "Ready to go back in?" Ethan asked. Sarah nodded, smoothing her emerald dress. "Ready." She turned back toward the golden light of the ballroom. The doors opened and the music swelled. Sarah Vance didn't just walk back into the party. She made an entrance. And this time, she knew exactly who she was. Liam Sterling spent 5 years in prison. When he was released, he was a felon with no prospects. He currently works as a shift manager at a logistics warehouse, the same kind of warehouse he used to look down on from his glass office. He lives in a small studio apartment and drives a used car. He learned the hard way that when you marry a woman for her silence, you should be terrified of the day she finds her voice. Sarah never spoke to him again, but her success was the loudest message she could have ever sent. Money can hide a lot of things, but it cannot hide character. Liam thought he was the main character of the story, but he forgot the golden rule. Be careful who you step on while you're climbing the ladder, because you'll meet them on the way down. And sometimes the person you are stepping on is the one holding the ladder. Wow. That was intense. It's crazy how arrogance can blind people to what's right in front of them. Liam had a loyal, loving wife and a lottery ticket to a good life, and he threw it all away because he wanted to look cool in front of a 22-year-old assistant. What do you think? Did Liam deserve a harsher punishment, or is living with the regret enough? And what would you have done if you were in Sarah's shoes? Would you have revealed your identity sooner or waited for the perfect moment in court? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. We have a crazy one coming up next week about a man who faked his own death to escape debt, only to run into his wife on vacation. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and remember, the truth always comes out in the wash. See you next time.